Here, sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. I knew I thought I'd seen you. David Martin.
Here.
Shlomo Melmed. Christine Miaskowski.
Here.
Jonathan Thomas.
Here.
Art Torres.
Here.
Christina Vori.
Here.
Thank you. Carol Watson. Keith Yamamoto.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, Larry.
Okay, first on the agenda is the Science Subcommittee mission statement. Just as background, this is a slightly modified mission statement from what was used about a year ago. I modified it to make it a little bit clearer and more specific. JT has had some input on it, and so the question is, do any members of the subcommittee have questions about the wording or concerns? I'm assuming that the silence means no concerns or questions, not that nobody else has read it.
We're just all muted.
Okay.
It looks good to me, Larry. Thanks for the word.
Okay.
Looks good, Larry.
That's clear.
Thank you.
Happy
Okay,
Hanukkah, Larry.
thank you. Okay. In the absence of any additional questions, can somebody move to approve?
Move it.
Second.
Okay, good. For
The second, sorry. Who was the second?
Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Any further questions from the subcommittee? Any public comment?
There are no hands raised.
Okey doke. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Haifa Abdullah, Elena Flowers, Mark.
Yes, present. I don't know if you missed me before, Maria. I was just emailing you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I just didn't unmute fast enough. Sorry.
Thanks so much. Mark Fisher Colbury.
Aye.
Judy Gasson.
Yes.
Larry Goldstein.
Yes.
David Higgins. Pat Levitt.
Yes.
David Lowe.
Yes.
Dave Martin.
Yes.
Shlomo Melmed. Christine Miaskowski.
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas.
Yes.
Art Torres.
Aye.
Christina Vori.
Yes.
Carol Watson. Keith Yamamoto.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Next up on the agenda, final draft strategic plan. Maria Milan, can you walk us through your thoughts and presentation, please?
Thank you, Dr. Goldstein. I'm going to share a screen really quickly to help us with this discussion. I want to make it just a slideshow. All right. I don't know if this is the right one. Make sure. Yes, it is. Okay, members of the ICOC Science Subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to go through the draft strategic plan. The draft plan was circulated to you prior to Thanksgiving, and I know it was a short turnaround, but we really wanted for you to see this plan. There are still there's still several rounds of copy editing left in terms of final fixing of typos, stylistic, and formatting, but we really wanted the content to be something that you had a chance to have a look at, and we wanted to have the opportunity to incorporate any additional feedback to the strategic plan prior to finalizing for the board meeting in December. I don't know if you still can see my screen.
We could, yes.
Okay, perfect. So as you can tell from the strategic plan, we really did do a pretty comprehensive background on CIRM, background on the landscape, as well as rationale for the plan, which really is organized around three major broad themes of advancing world-class science, delivering real-world solutions, and providing opportunity for all. In addition to expanding the mission statement, which we will talk about in a little bit, what we have done is emphasize the importance of the delivery of treatments and advancements that arise from CIRM's programs in the upcoming years to all patients in need, including diverse and underserved populations. And so this will require kind of a novel paradigm shifting approach, both to how we support and organize our scientific investments, as well as the type of programs we can do to foster the expertise and the workforce of tomorrow, as well as address gaps that the field still has in front of it in order to truly make these scientific discoveries something that can reach patients. So the three themes, just to highlight, and this is a summary of what you'll see in the strategic plan, and the theme of advancing world-class science. The general idea is to leverage collective scientific knowledge that's gained from all of our scientific programs, and also to harness the huge amounts of data that emanate from these projects, and to bring that to the scientific community via collaborative pathways organized in competency hubs and knowledge networks. And we go on to describe what those would look like, what the intent is, and the format for this. The idea behind this is to truly foster an organically collaborative synergies that would advance the science and make the most out of both basic translational research as well as reverse translation, where learnings that we have from later stage programs will inform questions that could be further researched in the basic and fundamental foundational stage of science. The second category is to deliver real world solutions. The major goal is to advance more therapies safely through FDA marketing approval, using our well-established partnership models, but building on that and collaborating with regulatory bodies, industry, and academic and community stakeholders, including healthcare delivery systems. The programs that we propose under that category involve leveraging our therapeutics development portfolio approach so that we are a one-stop shop in terms of our broad portfolio in discussions with stakeholders, including the FDA. And that is something that is already, you'll hear about it in a little bit. There are already structures for how these very innovative ways of approaching these programs from a portfolio approach. The other piece is funding a manufacturing network to overcome the hurdles that is very well known in the field toward bringing these programs all the way through toward commercialization into patients. Expand our Alpha Clinics network, not just in number, but in terms of expertise and activities, and developing community care centers of excellence based on the needs of the community. And the third theme is providing opportunities for all, opportunities regarding training, access to research opportunities for a diverse and highly skilled population, and to deliver accessible treatments to a diverse patient community. So in that category, we describe how we will do that with multiple on-ramps in our education programs, as well as the goal of working with our accessibility and affordability working group to create a roadmap for access and affordability. At the last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about the mission statement. One of the main points that Dr. Yamamoto made is to make sure that we don't forget the importance of basic science as we're driving translation toward the clinics. And it's very clear we don't forget about that, because accelerating world-class science is the very first thing that comes up in the mission statement. It all starts with strong science. And you will see in the strategic plan that it really does highlight how we will continue to commit to funding basic and foundational research, organizing it in a more efficient way, both for elucidating disease mechanisms and underlying creating ways to elucidate disease pathology as well as potential cures, but also to continue to fund translational and clinical research so that we can deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments to a diverse California and worldwide in an equitable manner. So this is the initial draft, near final format of the mission statement that you received based on a very strong feedback from the board that there should be a much more deliberate statement of the importance of diversity and equity in the mission statement. Since this time, we had excellent feedback from the board to just make it, not to change the content, but to just make it more tight in terms of a mission statement. So at the top is the mission statement you see in the draft plan: accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments to a diverse California and worldwide in an equitable manner. And we agree with the feedback we received that we should edit this to still retain the same meaning, but be more reflective of our intent. To edit this to say accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. I'm going to pause there just in case this was a very a point of a lot of discussion at the last board meeting. So I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to discuss the mission statement. Dr. Goldstein.
Sure. Anybody have concerns, suggestions, or questions about the mission statement?
This is Dave Martin. Well, one of the things that I think is really important for CIRM, since we are actually a small entity or a small fraction of all of the regenerative medicine science going on in the world, is to not just accelerate it, but to expand it. And I noticed the word explode is in there, scaling it. And and what Maria's first slide showed, second slide actually, is the activities that we want, or what we want to expand or scale. And so I just wonder whether the word scale or expansion, accelerate and expand world-class science, or the application of science, for example. But I also wonder whether we would benefit from having an overview of what our strategy is. Because in a way, there are always discussions about what strategy and what are logistics, et cetera. And there's no very clear distinction. I think it fuses. But I just wonder about in the strategy to something about scaling the unique features, capabilities, and achievements of CIRM. By scaling, I mean expanding. And so we want to have a big impact in not just California, but the world. And so accelerating is important, but also figuring out how to expand it. And one of the ways that I'm very enthusiastic about is the educational processes. That's a great way to expand or scale. So those are just some thoughts about what are we trying to do? What is our strategy in 2 sentences? And then get right into the 3 pillars, if you will, that Maria showed.
Dr. Martin, if you look at the I don't have it in front of me. Maybe Maria can point to it. Just before the mission statement in the strategic plan, in a blue box, there's actually a statement of what a statement of the strategy. And maybe if you know, I understand it doesn't say expand, but I think it's implicit in the fact that there's more investment into the programs that we describe. We're going to continue to fund the programs. Again, the educational programs are a very clear stated mission. So that will definitely, is something that it will do. And I think a statement that was made at the last meeting is that a mission statement crafting is something that it cannot be completely comprehensive, but what we really want to do is make sure that we capture the essence of why we're here, and what is it we're trying, and how do we know that we've succeeded if we've done this, right? And so that is, although it doesn't, and I have to say, we must have gotten a whole load of different, suggestions on this mission statement. And although we'd like to be able to do everything, unfortunately, I don't think it's possible. And I think the thing is, it emphasizes a science. It emphasizes it in terms of treatments to patients. It emphasizes equity and diversity and education, building of manufacturing, public-private partnerships, building of healthcare systems. Those are the how-tos. And so those are all embedded in our strategy. So I hope that reassures you. Certainly, we can potentially add wording in the description of the strategy as stated in the blue box prior to the mission statement that speaks to how this would expand the both knowledge and programs by doing this.
Yeah, good. I agree.
Okay, good. Then let's proceed, please.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can move these slides now. So in terms of theme one of the statements I think made by you, Dr. Goldstein, is that we really need to make sure that we continue to remain true to our commitment that we are not afraid of risks if the science is there. So to continue to fund high risk, high reward research projects, that this is unique to CIRM. And we will continue to do this by way of our existing funding program announcements as well as future announcements, that this will not by any stretch limit the type of bold programs that we will fund if the science makes sense and it has its value. In addition, we want to, as you can tell from the plan, we make a lot of the narrative is around the rationale for building data infrastructure to democratize data through knowledge networks and the acceleration of science and maybe the expansion of those programs through the use of these collaborative pathways via competency hubs. So that is something that is a very important and emphasized part of the strategic plan. One of the things that was brought up by many board members, Dr. Gass and I think Steve Julesgaard, many others, was that where is CNS in there? Because there was $1.5 billion specifically mentioned in Prop 14. We stated in the plan that this general template of enabling collaborative and consortium research, that the first focus will be on CNS. And so it's not that it's exclusive to CNS, but it'll be designed to enable integrated research and activities around CNS. So as I'll remind the board, the funding that goes to CNS in general organically does, calculate to approximately that much of the total bond funding, even in Prop 71. However, what we want to do is leverage that funding and extract as much value from the funding investment we put into those programs via the structure that we're proposing in the strategic plan, creation of knowledge networks, competency hubs, and team science. So I'm going to stop there for any board input, discussion, or questions on that topic.
So I would just make a comment that the past funding under Prop 71, in my understanding, was primarily for neurodegenerative disorders. It was spinal cord, Parkinson's, those types of things. Whereas the new $1.5 billion, if I understand correctly, is aimed more toward neuropsychiatric disorders, which is an area of tremendous unmet need. And I think you've done a considerable amount of work in planning ahead for that, but I just wanted to make that one distinction.
Thank you, Dr. Gasson. I think it includes neuropsychiatric, but it's broad CNS, and there is inclusion in the text about how early that field is, but that we believe that some of the programs that we are envisioning, such as shared models that for studying neuropsychiatric disease, such as cell models and gene editable cells and stem cells would be, and genomics information and other types of data that come from that will be something that'll be essential for that area of research.
I just want to reiterate on that point to Judy's point, and that is, as one of the authors, as we move forward, that was the intent, to make sure that we didn't ignore this whole area, because it has been for the most part. And if we can provide some kind of contribution for the future, that's what the intent of Proposition 14 was.
Thank you, Art. And so we have accounted for that. It's mentioned specifically in the strategic plan.
Yes.
And we do believe that the programs that are being set up will definitely go a long way. I wanted to call your attention that in Nature Cell Biology today, an article came out jointly authored by myself, the Allen Institute, and Ekemini Riley from Aligning Sciences, the Consortium for Aligning Sciences, speaking to the importance of building diverse cell models and shared cells and cell models. We will send a copy of that. There's open access to it. We'll send a link. So there is great interest and a shared desire to be able to create these type of resources for all the various areas we're talking about, including neuropsychiatric disease.
Maria, I just have one comment on the second bullet. Each of the bullets has an action verb. The first one is about continue, and it's clear what that means. The third one is deployment. That's an action item. The second one, design, I think is. Sorry, I'm by Children's Hospital.
That's okay.
The second one is, design is something you design, but not necessarily deploy or implement. And there's a word you use on another page 12. You said develop next generation. I would even substitute design for develop infrastructure that organizes and democratizes. The reason I say that is because then it becomes not implicit, but actually very clear that there's going to be an implementation of infrastructure and data democratization that's going to require, SOPs and other sorts of things to make sure that these become really shared distributed resources.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure, I know that the team is busily taking notes, and we'll make sure so this is just my paraphrasing. So I may have been, I may have neglected to use the wording we had in the strategic plan itself, but we will ensure that it's more active and deliberate in the plan. I think it is. So I apologize that my slide deck does not reflect that. And by the way, on that topic, there is still additional discussions and stakeholder meetings that will be occurring next year to make sure that we do have something that can be implemented, that's feasible, and that does achieve this goal. And you'll be involved in those discussions. You'll be hearing more about that. And Rosa, Dr. Rosa Aviles is in charge of that as our VP of Scientific Programs.
Hey.
Thank you. Any other, Dr. Goldstein, shall I go on, or are there additional comments?
So if anybody has any additional concerns or questions, now is the time to get them out there. Going once, twice. Okay, President Milan, please proceed.
Thank you. Never been called President Milan. That's okay. All right. So, and then in terms of theme 2, optimize CIRM's clinical funding partnership model, it sounds so aspirational, but we actually really do have a process for doing this. So our therapeutics development program over the past, especially over the past 5 years with the past strategic plan, has created a very robust way of partnering and managing our programs through advisory panels, the clinical advisory panels, and we also extended that to translational advisory panels. And in this way, we're able to really take a portfolio approach for how we advise our programs, although they're very, very different, but just a general approach of ensuring that we really are aligned and informed by the needs that they will, by the FDA requirements and the types of program needs that will need to be in place in order for them to be able to move down the commercialization path. Our head of our therapeutics development program, Dr. Abla Creasy, with a team, envisions that this advisory panel and portfolio approach can actually be moved to the next level, where we bring in additional expertise and resources so that we can help our programs really identify key bottlenecks toward marketing approval, and then also anticipate post-marketing strategies. So we have been in discussion with different groups. There's a lot of interest, including some of the initiatives out there, such as the Bespoke initiative that NIH and the FDA are jointly collaborating on. We're discussing with them the possibility of having a more formal relationship so that we can all look at our programs together. In this case, it's for rare disease with AAV related gene delivery, but that would be a first demonstration case of kind of a portfolio approach. And Dr. Creasy is leading that discussion. We'll report back with more soon. So that is what, not necessarily a new concept proposal, it's how we are leveraging what we already do and creating new programs and bringing opportunities forward for key partnerships in navigating the regulatory path, as well as anticipating hurdles toward marketing approval. Any questions on that particular? Okay. In addition,
sorry, Maria, I was so slow in getting off mute.
Sure.
In the previous slide, I'm just wondering how much CIRM is involved in reimbursement conversations, especially as it comes to sort of potential one-off curative treatments. Is that something that CIRM will participate in?
I expect that that's something that's going to be taken up and, in partnership with the AAWG. In terms of payment models and reimbursement and patient assistance. But you do raise a question that was brought up before about how do I forgot who brought it up, how will CIRM handle things such as expanded access and those type of ways that the patients may receive treatments prior to approval. And by having these mechanisms and formats for interacting with the FDA and the regulatory bodies, I think that we will have more of an opportunity to work through that together. I know that it's kind of related. It's not what you asked. The reimbursement part will come with the roadmap toward accessibility and affordability.
I think the question that's been asked, Maria, is not FDA, but CMS.
Right. So that would be something that would have to be, I think that's Dr. Melmed, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Hello. I think that that's something that's going to have to be discussed within the the Accessibility and Affordability Working Group. And we will have an internal team of medical affairs and policy who will work with the Accessibility and Affordability Working Group to ensure that we come up with a roadmap for how we have the discussions and get informed in terms of how we work through those particular issues.
No, that sounds very rational, but maybe just in the second bullet to add stakeholders, comma, FDA, comma, and payers.
Yes.
Just if this is the high level plan, then it should devolve down to the other committees. But I think that the point that was raised is very important.
Thank you. That's a very good point. I'm looking at this and you're right in terms of the spirit of it. That would actually be, maybe it's not something that's be carried out by the therapeutics development team per se, but it's related to the programs being developed. So thank you for that.
Pay yours with an O, not pay yours.
Yes, that's my New Jersey accent. I spell it O, but I
No.
pronounce it O. Okay.
But
Thank you.
it is O. It is O.
I know that. I just pronounced it
Okay,
as a
interesting
New Jerseyan.
discovery. Let's proceed.
All right. We'll make sure to add that. And so the Alpha Clinics expansion and community care centers of excellence are items that are specifically mentioned in Proposition 14. The strategic plan outlines the idea behind Alpha Clinics expansion, not just in terms of capacity, but in terms of expertise and resources, including competency hubs for clinical research and healthcare delivery. In addition, there was I think Dr. Goldstein and others had mentioned that it was so important to create opportunities for basic scientists really to have exposure to clinical research and to the considerations in the community and with patients. And this will be another, in addition to our education programs, which provide that type of engagement and those opportunities, expansion of these healthcare infrastructure and the Alpha Clinics expansion, as well as the future community care centers, will provide a exposure and training ground for students and scientists to interact. And that is something we do anticipate building into it. In addition, these programs will provide a setting for workforce development. At the last meeting, it was mentioned that we addressed the issue of workforce, a gap in workforce and trained workforce for manufacturing, but there's also a gap in terms of clinical research and the support roles in clinical research. And these programs, especially the Alpha Clinics expansion as the first one, will have these opportunities for training of nurses, as well as clinical trial coordinators and other types of specialists and ancillary types of programs that could support clinical trials.
Maria, I know we touched on this a bit at the last discussion, but could you just, again, for the benefit of the subcommittee here, lay out the process and timeline to implement the community care centers of excellence component of this?
So of the two, the Alpha Clinics expansion will precede the community care centers because there is already an established program.
Right.
And then what'll happen is that that also will provide opportunities for linkages to the future community care centers. Maria Bonneville and team are planning additional outreach in the upcoming year so that we can be best informed in terms of how we design the community care centers, the types of programs that it involves, the type of resources that would be embedded in these community care centers, the type of specialties that would be involved or need to be grown in order to truly support and address the needs of the community. So that will be something that will still be in the development phase through next year. And we don't expect that that'll roll out till probably the following year. But the idea is that this would be something that's implemented within the 5-year strategic plan and within the parameters as provided for by Prop 14.
Maria, can I extend that question? This slide is a little bit unclear to the initial reader in that we're talking about research and we're talking about delivery of care, or are we talking about clinical trials? And it's not clear from the slide what we're talking about. So Alpha Clinics is clearly research. Community care centers, are we talking about delivering care or participating in clinical trials? Because it's not articulated on the slide.
Right.
Serving the needs could be, and if it is serving the needs, then it should not just be community care centers, it should be serving the needs to all of California. But is it just clinical trial participation or access to clinical trials, or is it access to stem cell therapies?
So Dr. Melman, we believe it's going to be all of the above, and we don't have the specifics because this is still something that is going out to the community to determine what the current level of understanding is, how actually this all works in the community. So we have a better handle on the academic setting. But let me just also preface this by saying this is by no means a comprehensive slide that outlines every aspect of the Alpha Clinic's expansion. It only highlights a specific point in that this would be an opportunity for training. The Alpha Clinics will support clinical trials. It will provide specialized expertise for things such as, the delivery of these specialized and release of products, cell pharmacy, all of that. But it's not all listed here. It's in the strategic plan. The slides I created were really just to point out specific topics that arose in the October meeting, and it's in response to that. But your question about community care centers and Alpha Clinics, in general, the idea is that they will each have a different way of delivering these types of offerings, but both will be related, both will serve somehow in some capacity clinical trials as well as healthcare delivery and research. Community care centers of excellence is still in its formative phase, but just the type of research that we might be talking about at community care centers of excellence may be things such as social determinants research or other types of research that inform accessibility and affordability, that type of thing, or social, in addition to social determinants, quality of life, et cetera, type of research that also supplement and expand on the types of classic clinical trial research that may occur at the academic centers. These centers may also serve to inform and direct patients from the community to the academic centers or the Alpha Clinics when appropriate for both information as well as participation in clinical trials.
I'm nervous that people are going to read this and assume all sorts of things which aren't in here. So if I've got a clinic in Fresno, which has no community care center, can my patient receive cell therapy?
So I want to say that this slide deck is only for purposes of discussion. The strategic plan document, it should be the document that we really refer to. I don't know if you had a chance to review.
Yeah.
And so if you think, so in that page, it doesn't talk about specifically, or those pages, it doesn't commit to anything because we really don't know the format. It's very careful about that. So what we do describe is the intent behind this, which is in some way to ensure that we have visibility to the opportunities with these trials, as well as where appropriate to have involvement of the community. But if after you read it, you're still concerned, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, please proceed.
Next slide is hopefully like the least controversial, because I think there was overwhelming agreement that there is a need to create a solution to manufacturing and a more reliable way to transfer the technology from our academic GMP early phase production out to commercialization entities. And this is the partnership that was described at the last board meeting. The idea is to fund the academic GMP facilities, both to increase their standards of following quality by design, creating better ways of tech transfer, and where possible, advanced standards and that can be shared across. The idea is that these academic GMP facilities would both support as well as develop better standards that de-risk the eventual tech transfer. And then in terms of how the industry partners play into this, CIRM would facilitate the interaction, because these are industry partners that already have their own business plan and motivation towards success of these programs, either by way of being the provider of manufacturing services, resources, or actual investors in bringing these forward. So that kind of network and collaborative type network and public-private partnership is something that is being developed as a concept proposal. Any questions?
Maria, I have a quick question. What is the status and how does the IQVIA Cell and Gene Therapy Center play into all this? Is it still supported by CIRM? Is it used? What can you tell about that?
So there were two arms of that. What we initially called the Accelerating Center and the Translating Center, and those are both awarded to IQVIA. The Accelerating Center dealt with regulatory and clinical operations type resources. That award has already completed, and that there's a sustainable business unit within IQVIA that still provides that service, and there is, I believe, still an office in San Diego. So what happened there is that they achieved the support of a certain number of programs. It was a learning process, an interactive process, and now they are self-sustainable within their own company through IQVIA, but now they can support cell and gene therapy clinical trials. The Translating Center is in the final stages of completing, and it is actively helping our programs, both just completing their preclinical programs and manufacturing and process development considerations to get them prepared for clinical trials. Once that program ends, what will happen is they potentially could also be some of the industry partners that come in along with other industry partners to support CIRM programs and process development and manufacturing, bringing in the types of expertise they built as they were initially seeded to do through the initial Translating Center funding.
Okay, great, thanks.
So folks, I'm very conscious of the time, and I think we're going to have to move a little bit faster in order to make it through this draft plan and then also to have time for the budget. So I'm going to ask people to hold your questions till the end where at all possible and try to concentrate them at the level of strategy, not at the level of individual details about what we've done in the past. As we get to the end, it may be a little clearer whether we have time or not for some of those additional discussion points. So I apologize for the time pressure, but welcome to life. Maria, please.
Real life at the top of the slide. And so thankfully, this is a final one, build a diverse and highly strategic theme 3, build a diverse and highly skilled workforce to support the growth of regenerative medicine economy in California. We will connect our education pillar programs. As you know, we have very robust education programs that have been brought to the board, and an additional one coming up shortly. And then to integrate that with all of the workforce development programs that will come out of things such as the manufacturing network, public-private partnership. We also intend to foster additional collaboration between community colleges, universities, and other academic entities for efforts that we talked about previously, such as overcoming the workforce development needs for manufacturing, as well as building expertise in process development sciences. And we'll leverage alpha clinics and community care centers, healthcare delivery systems to develop education curricula. This is something that Dr. Miskowski mentioned earlier about, are we involved, will we be involved in curriculum development? We believe our education programs, as well as all these other infrastructure programs, by nature, will be able to build curricula as well as potential certification programs. All right. I just lost my slides again. I have notes on these. Okay. And I think that's it, Dr. Goldstein.
Oh, okay, we're closer to the end than I thought. So we do have time for some details as well as strategic questions, please, members of the subcommittee. Mark Fisher-Coldray, take it away.
Yeah, this is an additional data point. I think from a strategic perspective, we should do a little bit of a call out around data science. In other words, using artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to help accelerate science. I think in the document, we make a very oblique reference to AI, and I think that's going to be an important strategic element for us to explore. And I think supporting that is the concept of the FAIR data standards, which gets to our data sharing aspect as well. And those FAIR data standards that help support machine learning and data science expansion and acceleration, that's findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And we sort of touched a little bit on the data side, interoperable, but I would recommend somewhere we bake in that we have a goal of trying to get to the FAIR data standards, which is an acknowledged data stream for being able to share information in a broader manner.
Thank you so much. It's actually, we'll make sure that it's more apparent, but the idea behind the knowledge networks is just that. Those are the kind of the how-tos and the logistics of that. Just by the way, in our program announcements already, our RFAs, when we ask our applicants to submit their data sharing plan, we do specifically point to the FAIR data standards as one of the references. In addition, data science is something that's included in our education programs, and what will be even more something you'll see a little bit more dramatically in an undergraduate education program, which will be coming to you soon. But to your point, we should highlight it as one of the areas within the education programs that will be specifically included. So we will include that in the wording. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or suggestions, please?
Yeah, Maria, in an early iteration, I don't know, two or 3 years ago of this plan, when we first started talking about it, we discussed the possibility of CIRM becoming an accrediting agency for clinical training in cell therapy. Did that fall off the radar screen? Was there a lack of interest, or is it not?
Oh, there is definitely a very strong interest, and what we're hoping is that we're encouraging our Alpha Clinics expansion applicants to be able to include that in their plans.
But that would have to come from us, not from the clinic, because if we're going to become an agency which is going to accredit training programs in clinical cell therapy, that would have to be a central CIRM project and not a site.
Sure. No, I see what you're saying. And I do believe not just for clinical, but other type areas as well, that once we, CIRM itself though is not the expert in training, right? We don't run fellowship programs. We don't do any of that. So we really will rely on our academic centers to say, here's a curricula, here the training, here the requirements. And on top of that, there are these stem cell related things. We propose to you that this makes up and then it'll be up to CIRM to decide that meets our standards. And then we would bring to the board as to whether we can, have, whether we could actually have it as a CIRM certified training program. And that's something that we definitely have discussed. It has not fallen off our radar, but in terms of the how-tos, it really needs to grow from the academic centers to feed into that, because and so I mentioned the Alpha Clinics expansion because that's the very place where clinical research occurs, right? That's a starting point. And then from that, we can build on how we bring in additional centers and how we interact with accrediting bodies and societies.
If I can add a comment here, it seems to me that a relevant comparison would be the NIH in this case. So the NIH itself doesn't really do a lot of accreditation programs. But of course, it funds a great deal of research and professional activities and curriculum development and all that. And that's probably where those sorts of accreditations should originate for us as well. Because I think you're right, Maria, to build out an accreditation unit within CIRM, that is a serious undertaking. And given the limits on amount of financial expenditure and number of employees, this may not be the best place for us to build it out. But other comments, please. Well, that killed discussion. That was
Well,
useful.
I think that, but having said that, though, I really do think that we have an opportunity to influence in a way that would make that so, right? And so I think without having to do a layout in terms of our own infrastructure and our own funds, I think just by virtue of promoting these standards and promoting these opportunities within our programs in a structured and organized way, I think that the leaders within the academic centers are very interested in kind of being the ambassadors to make that happen. So, and that's where it belongs. It belongs with the academic leaders, with those who run fellowship programs. We're integrated within the universities that do appointments.
Dr. Milmed, you satisfied with that?
Yeah, I just hope that someone else doesn't do it instead of us. I mean, I can imagine the cardiologist suddenly saying, you know, we got a stem cell program in cardiology.
You know,
okay, yeah. I'd like us to be the leaders.
Yeah,
well, I think we should do it with the cardiology, the American cardiac. I'm sorry, Doctor.
Sorry. Maybe conversation with the California Medical Association if they have any.
No, they don't do it. No.
They don't want to do that. No.
All goes to the professional societies.
I think professional societies. You know, I always point to a story where when I started my transplant surgery training, there was no specific certification. You were a general surgeon. And you went through training, you did as many cases, and you got the required amount, and then you were able to, get a job as a transplant surgeon. But then during my training at the very end, the American Society for Transplant Surgeons then created, requirements, and then programs were then deemed able to give certification for transplant surgery. So it's something that really does happen as the field matures. And I think CIRM can play an important part in maturing, that direction.
Good.
Thank you.
Other questions or items of discussion?
So it's Pat. So theme 1 has a lot of reference to shared research laboratories and development of hubs. And sometimes the statements are very explicit about what the goals are, which is what a strategic plan should do. But sometimes it lacks specificity. Like I still don't quite understand what a research hub will be and who will have access to it. And I understand the limitations of the what you include in the overarching strategic plan, but some of this requires a lot of specificity. I go onto the CIRM website and I don't find very much information about shared research laboratories, for example. And I don't want to see a repeat of that, where it seems very insular. That is, they exist, but it's very insular in terms of, because there's language about access to these hubs outside of the funded institutions, and that I assume also scientists who are doing stem cell regenerative medicine research who may not be running the hub and nonetheless, need access to it if these are going to be truly shared. So I'm just speaking of somebody outside. I'm outside of this, of the community, right? And look towards it, and I don't see as much clarity as I think there should be. For example, there's a statement in here that says some competency hubs could serve as a workforce training microcosm, and I think that's a great idea, but could is like, well, will it be, or is this part of the strategic plan, or this is an option? So I think a strategic plan needs, in some places, a bit more specificity. Will be. Okay, it will be. That means that's part of the strategic plan.
Dr. Levitt, could you please supply President Milan with some of those comments in writing so she knows where your concerns are? Maria, that's going to be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Yes, but I'd like to just, I think that I think I know where that comes from, in terms of the idea that some of it lacks specificity. The idea of competency hubs is a very broad description that that really speaks to a principle rather than an actual program. Whereas a shared lab, like a cell-based shared lab like iPSCs or whatever, are specific. Okay, we just need to do a better job of this. The shared labs is an example of a competency hub, right? Whereas a competency hub could be something that's not necessarily specifically and primarily CIRM funded, but it could be something that's built in to the things we do, such as it could be that the alpha clinics, the clinical networks, have a very specialized imaging core that becomes a competency hub. Then that is something that has broad application across the alpha clinics network, right? Whereas a shared labs itself, for which there's specific funding with potential renovation funding, we envision that's the first rollout. An example of a competency hub will be something that provides for and deals with specialized cells and cell models. So we will go take a look at that so that we can make it very clear what is the broad principle, and then this is an example of it as a specific program.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, additional questions or discussion before we wrap this up? Okay, we get a motion on the table, please. I think, Maria, you would like
I move to approve.
Here we go. Thank you.
Mark. Thank
Oh,
you,
I'm
Mark.
sorry, I forgot to ask for that. Okay, thank you.
That's my job to ask for it.
Second.
Was that Pat?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion before we move on. Any additional final questions, final discussion? Hearing none, members of the public comments. Maria, we got any?
Nope, no hands raised.
Okay, then to the exciting part. Maria, could you please call the roll?
Haifa Abdullah,
Present.
Elena Flowers.
Present.
No, I think we need a yes or a
This is
no.
a yes or no vote.
Please.
Yes.
Right, it's not a roll call. You
Haifa,
need to start the roll call again, Maria.
I'm doing so. Haifa,
Yes.
thank you. Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Aye.
Judy Gasson,
Yes.
Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
David Higgins, Pat Levitt,
Yes.
David Lowe,
Yes.
David Martin,
Yes.
Shlomo Mehmed,
Yes.
Christine Wiskowski,
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Art Torres,
Yes.
Christina Vori,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Keith Yamamoto.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you, members of the committee. Okay, final item on today's meeting, consideration of a revised CIRM budget for fiscal year 21-22. Is that Pune Simpson?
Yes, good afternoon.
Oh, whoops, hang on a second. Mark, you have your hand up. Is
Just-
that meaningful?
Yeah, just a quick comment that I'd like to publicly acknowledge the tremendous work by the CIRM staff to prepare the strat plan in conjunction with all the parties that they interacted with, but extremely well done. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, President Milan, compliment your staff, everybody here. Good job.
I want to thank, I mean, the entire team worked on this, and the leadership team was, had organized all the different work groups, as you saw from how it's described in the end. And the writing team, which includes Sham Patel and Mitra Hushman and Maria Bonneville in terms of the kind of the look and feel of the document itself. They were instrumental in kind of the final product. So really, this is a huge team effort involving the entire organization, the board, and our external stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Great, and way to lead the team, Maria. Okay, now on to Pune. Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I'm Pune Simpson, the Director of Finance, and I'll be presenting the mid-year revised budget proposals to you for approval. So just to give you some context with regards to the mid-year proposal, in 2021, when the bond passed, we came to you with a mid-year budget to reflect the ramping up of CIRM because the original budget was based on a ramping down. Similar to last year, we're coming to you with a mid-year budget based on what you approved in June, and then the changes that need to occur to reflect the initiatives that Dr. Milan just presented as part of the strategic plan. So as background, in June, the board approved a budget of $360 million in research grants, and this slide kind of summarizes the different categories and the amounts that were approved in June. So kind of continuing on with what the proposal is this year, we're coming to you with a request of $114 million in increases. So the middle column represents a mid-year budget in two categories. The first category, the translational research budget, we'd like to increase by $34 million because the original budget that was approved was based on benchmark costs of prior funding rounds. Since the beginning of this year, we've had an increased trend in grant requests and viable candidates. So we're asking for an increase to be able to fully fund the request this year. And then with the infrastructure, we would like to support programs anticipated in 2021 that Dr. Milan just mentioned in the strategic plan for an increased total of $114 million or a total budget of $447 million. So we'd ask for your support and approval for that request. That is the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Maybe I'll ask the first one. So if you ratchet this forward 10 years, are we still in good shape?
Yes, absolutely. We have taken into consideration funding of the core pillars, and there's funding for at least 10 years, definitely more, depending on how much the awards are each year.
Right. And then a request, if we're going to keep the slides up, could you keep the slide up with the proposed budget change? Thank you. Members of the committee.
I have a very similar question to Larry. Can you remind if any of these categories were capped in the Prop 14?
I will defer to our grant management team for that.
I can speak to that, Pune. So Dr. Wari, there were no caps to the specific programs. There's a cap on annual expenditure for research, and these were all within that cap. The actual proposed budget in June that was presented by Jennifer Lewis was based on benchmarking for what our past performance had been for the different categories based on the yield for each review, the average amount per each award, and the number of cycles of anticipated award. And that's how we arrived at the numbers. And the reason that we increased the translational is because the performance this year was higher than our prior benchmark. We always benchmark to the maximum yield just to make sure that we have enough funds available for those that are recommended to the board.
Thanks.
Mark Fisher-Colbrady, please. I think you are on mute.
Sorry. Do we have a good tracking mechanism for tracking the $1.5 billion initiatives related to brain treatments?
That's being tracked actively by our science and grants management team.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other questions, concerns, what have you from the subcommittee?
Larry, can I just make one comment, quick comment?
Please, JT.
Just for members of the subcommittee, these numbers were previewed with Al Rolette as chair of the finance committee subcommittee and myself last week, and we're completely aligned with these as the numbers that should go forward.
Good, thank you, JT. Other questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Art and Christina, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion's on the table. Any further questions, members of the subcommittee? Hearing none. Any questions or concerns or comments from the public? Nothing,
Nope.
Maria?
Nope.
Okay. Engaged as always. Let's see. I guess we're up to calling the roll. Maria?
Haifa Abdulhak,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Aye.
Judy Gasson,
Yes.
Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
David Higgins, Pat Levitt,
Yes.
David Lowe,
Yes.
David Martin,
Yes.
Shlomo Melmet,
Yes.
Christine Miskowski,
Yes.
John Thomas,
Yes.
Art Torres,
Aye.
Christina Vori,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Keith Yamamoto.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Great. Any final questions or issues from the subcommittee before we move towards adjournment? Hearing none. Maria, any final public comment, questions, what have you? Nope, that's good. Let's see, do we have to have a motion to adjourn a meeting or can I just adjourn us?
You can just adjourn.
Okay, nobody's going to
Larry.
complain about a meeting ending early, so let's do it. Oh,
Great.
sorry, somebody
Great job,
say something?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
thank you.
Larry.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Larry.
Yeah,
I know.
thanks, guys.